Hey, my name is Kyle. I'm the co-lead pastor here at LifePoint, and we are on week 2 of Paradox. I'm excited to share this week with you. I want to take you back and tell you a little bit of story about myself. In 2015, I was working for Saddleback Church, and I wanted to teach more often, but it was taken by some guy named Rick, and so I wasn't going to teach a lot then. And so I talked with some people, and I realized it was my time to end my time at Saddleback Church because I wanted to do more of this. And so at that time, I started to go on interviews and was really excited about what the next chapter of my life would be. And then as I was sending out interviews, I was on my computer and I was kind of going out running every once in a while. Something happened to my spine. In fact, my L4, my L5, and my S1 vertebrae and the cartilage between them, the tissue, just started to evaporate. And one day, I just started to lose feeling on the left side of my body. It started with my leg, and my leg just kind of started to lift up a little bit, and so to kind of relieve some of that pressure, and then it went up to my arm, and then after a while, it was the entire left side of my body. I was almost paralyzed on the entire left side of my body. I had crushed the sciatic nerve. My vertebrae had just pummeled it to the point where I couldn't walk anymore. And it was an uncomfortable time, to say the least. In fact, it's probably the most suffering and the most pain I've ever been in my entire life. I couldn't go to sleep at night. I had to put a flashlight in between two of my vertebrae to separate them enough to give me enough relief to be able to go to sleep at night. And I would wake up in the morning, this terrible purple and green bruise, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. But it was better than the pain I was in as I was trying to just get some sleep, and my vertebrae and my nerves were just on fire. It was terrible. And I remember getting up enough courage to kind of go outside and try to go for a walk. I was seeing chiropractics at this time, and I remember vividly, I was in Newport Beach, I was walking down the street, and this high school group of guys and girls who were on the track and field team just comes running by me. And I just broke down and cried. Like I couldn't handle it. I thought, I'm never going to run again. I'm not even sure if I'm going to walk again. I could shuffle and do this kind of like old manish, like really hard way to get down the street, and I couldn't do it. And I was in my 30s, early 30s. And so this was a challenge for me. And it was at that moment I realized I am far weaker than I think. In one moment, everything can be taken away from me. I have so little power. I have so little actual strength in my body, in my mind, and over my life. And you've probably realized that too. Maybe it's because of COVID. Maybe it's because of your finances. Maybe it's because of your marriage. Maybe it's because of your job or something else, that you realize that at one moment, everything in your life can change, and you are not as strong as you thought you are. And the paradox that we're going to talk about today is strength through weakness. And what we want to talk about is that the perfect place to find the power and the strength of God at work in you and through you is actually in your weakness. And that's a paradox in itself, right? Strength and weakness are on opposite sides of the scale. That's the reason that there are two different words for them. That's the reason that they mean completely different things. But paradoxically, with God, He actually wants us to realize His strength in our weakness. It's totally crazy. Now, there's a guy who kind of represents this better than anybody else, and his name is the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul used to have a different name. His name was Saul, and he was a Pharisee. He was a teacher of the law. He was born on the right side of the tracks. He had the right pedigree. He was born on the right day to the right tribe, and he had all the training. He grew up and essentially could talk to everyone and say, look, I've got life good. I've got Roman citizenship. I'm respected. I'm well paid. People in the community have to respect me, maybe even fear me, maybe even like me. And Paul had all this reason to boast. In fact, the Jewish word, or at least the Greek word for boast, would be something that would hold the head up high. It literally means like your neck. The reason that people could hold their head up high in that time, and the way they used this word, was because of their accomplishments. In Paul's day, the people who would follow him around, the people who knew the Bible, or at least the Old Testament well, were the people who could hold their head up high because, like Paul, they were born on the right day, on the right side of the tracks, with the right pedigree, and had the right training. And they were from the right tribe. And so they held their head up high because they could actually say, man, everything in my life is going well. And after a while, they may have taken that to an extreme, to think it is their own strength, it is their own lifestyle that has gotten them to where they are. And Paul used to be one of them. And then he meets Jesus. And after he meets Jesus, what happens to him is he realizes he is far weaker than he thought. In fact, in one instance, he talks about some sort of a reverse resume. It's fascinating to hear about because people who were following Paul around, they could say, we've got letters from certain people, we're from the right tribe, all the things I already mentioned, and they would hold their head up high and boast in their accomplishments and in their background. But Paul does the reverse. Paul has kind of a reverse resume. He talks about 5 times he received from the Jews 40 lashes minus 1. He was shipwrecked. He spent the night and day in sea. He's been in danger from rivers, from Pharisees, from bandits, from Gentiles in the city and in the country. He's labored and toiled, gone without sleep. He's known hunger and gone without food. Besides everything else he has faced, he is weak. And I'm reading this from 2 Corinthians chapter 11. He has this reverse resume. He says, the things I boast in? This would be Paul speaking. I boast in my weakness. He says, that's what he says actually. He said, let no one take me for a fool, but I'm going to speak like a fool. Because this self-confident boasting, as I'm talking about, is from the Lord. Since many are boasting in the way the world does, I too will boast, but I will boast in a different way. He says in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 30, if I must boast, I will boast in the things that show my weakness, not my strength. The God and the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ, who is to be praised forever, knows that I am not lying. All of these things actually happened to me. Can you imagine going into a job interview? And most of us, when we go in, we take the best parts of ourselves. Here's the experience that we've had. Here's our upbringing. Here's our education. Here's what we can do for you. Paul does the reverse. It's like he hands in this reverse resume. Says, here's all the terrible stuff that has ever happened to me. Would you hire me? Would you hire him? He says all this because he wants to boast not in his strength. He realizes he has none apart from God. And the simple fact of the matter is, you have none apart from God, and I have none apart from God. We've got no strength apart from any that he has given us. And paradoxically, that's exactly where he wants us to know that we are. He wants us to know that without him, we are truly weak. And maybe you push back on this, and I could probably prove it to you. That time that you had a problem at work, if you have a job or if you're seeking one right now, and then you realize, man, I've done everything I can. Only God can give me a new one or put me in a better place or give me a new boss. That time in your relationship where you feel like you've done everything you can and you got I got to hand this over to God because I've done everything that I can. It's only up to him. That time where you've been either in so much emotional, physical, or relational pain that you realize you've got no control over your life or other people, and you really are weaker than you think you are. This is the kind of stuff that Paul's talking about. He's saying, without God, you are truly weak, and it's the perfect place to be. In Paul's story, he actually has a reason to boast. He talks about all the weak parts, and then he tells this short story. He says, when I have, and this is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he talks about this weird encounter that he gets caught up in this vision, and he actually travels to heaven. He hears God and the angels talking about some really important stuff. If people were to do that today, a book would be written about it. There'd be a Showtime series on it. There would be something on like the Hallmark Network, and it'd be an hour and a half of our time we could never get back in our life. But it would be interesting because all of us would boast about a time like that, and Paul doesn't. He says, look, I've got a reason that I could say really amazing things. I'm close to God. God showed me this incredible vision of heaven and of him. But he doesn't boast on that. In fact, God gives him a thorn in his flesh. And we're not sure what this is. It could be physical ailment, could be mental anguish, it could be the people that were following him. But God gives him this thorn in his flesh to keep Paul weak and dependent upon him. And Paul actually prays 3 times, God, will you take this away from me? And God gives him this message back, and it's the reason that this paradox exists. He says, my grace, God is talking to Paul here, my grace is sufficient for you, Paul, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And this is the paradox that we want to understand today. God's power in your life, in you and through you, the perfect place to find it is not in your strength, it is in your weakness. You are far weaker than you think, and I'm far weaker than I think. And that is where God does his best work. When we finally cry out to him, when we finally give up control, when we finally realize we don't have enough strength to get through anything, and we lean and seek him, it is amazing what he does in our lives. And so I hope this will be helpful to you in your personal study, in your small group, if you guys are going to chat about this in a second. I want to ask you a few questions, though. And these are in your study guide, and maybe I'll ask you one more. What is something, and maybe you need someone else to help you determine this, what is something that you think you're strong in that you're actually not? Maybe you need someone else to help you understand that. And what's the danger in pretending or maybe thinking that you're strong all the time? What's the danger in that? And then another question, maybe about God. Why would he use the weakness of people to showcase his strength? Why wouldn't he use strong people to showcase his strength? I hope this lesson has been helpful for you. I hope you'll tune in every week. I hope you go to our YouTube page and tune in on Sundays at 8:30 or 10 o'clock. Thank you so much for letting me join you. Have a great time.